Wow, that's one way to introduce someone, right? And great job on pronouncing the name, Reese. So, dream, dare, do. What a powerful, powerful theme for the conference, right? So first of all, I have to admit, being here at the very first Lean In conference, an event based on one of the most pivotal books I've read so far, being here, well, it's like a dream in itself. And when they asked me, I dared to say yes. And here I am doing it. Of course, I just had to do that. I was first introduced to the book Lean In by a very good friend of mine, Eugenie, who happens to be in the audience today. She's the same friend being involved in part of the organization of today's event, who recommended me to the organizers and as a potential speaker. And boy, did that work out. So to you, Eugenie, I say thank you for hooking your sister up. Thank you for leaning in. Now, there are many lessons that I've taken from the book that I try to live by every day. But one particular one that comes to mind is the lesson of how, as women of today, we stand on the shoulders of the women that came before us, women that had to sacrifice a lot, breaking barriers for us to enjoy the privileges that we have today. I particularly like this lesson because I think it represents that we are part of a bigger puzzle, right? So we have to do all that we possibly can to advance the agenda as far as possible, to make as much progress as possible, so that when we pass on the baton stick to the future generation, we stand there proud and happy of what we will have achieved. But today, I'm going to share with you 3 little personal stories. A story about a dreamer, a darer, and a bunch of doers, in the hope that I can inspire you to start doing. Now, I know I started off like a bullet there. Allow me to take a step back and introduce myself. My name is Ruvarashe Chinyemba, and I live and work in Belgium. I actually used to be based here in Zurich before, but now I'm all about Belgium. So clearly, I have a thing for small European countries that speak way too many languages. But Ruvarashe Chinyemba is not your most typically Belgian-sounding name. Well, that's because I'm not from there. In fact, I'm originally from Zimbabwe, born and raised. And growing up in Zimbabwe has been a fascinating journey for me. You've probably seen the country come up in the news for all the wrong reasons of late, but that is a story for another day. But like many young girls, growing up, I got a lot of inspiration from my mother, my fiercely generous mother. I choose to call her the dreamer in my talk today. My mom is the firstborn of 9 children. She grew up in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe, which is why I picked this picture. Very beautiful part of the country, so I highly recommend you please go visit. But despite showing a lot of potential, and despite having a sharp mind, this wasn't enough to have my mom sent to school. In fact, growing up as a rural girl in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe in the late 1960s meant that this opportunity passed her, only to fall first to the second-born because he was a boy. But fortunately for my mom, one of her uncles, seeing her potential, seeing her talent, took it upon himself to convince my grandfather to take my mom to school. And with much persuasion, he agreed. Now, what my mom went on to do with this opportunity is completely amazing. She went on to pursue higher education in West Africa and then later on in Europe. Now, what started off as a story of just a rural girl in the eastern highlands of Zimbabwe turned out to be a story about a real dreamer who went on to do something with her life. Now, this is a beautiful, beautiful story, but probably one that kind of also sounds a bit familiar. What really touches me about my mom is what she went on to do with all this empowerment to empower others. And first of all, I have to say my mom's top priority was to make sure that us, her 6 children, all had access to the best education that Zimbabwe had to offer. But probably you'd be thinking, well, you were her kids, so it was her responsibility to educate you, to which that would be true. But she didn't just stop there. See, I grew up in a house with many cousins and many relatives who became my brothers and sisters because my mom chose to also educate them, because otherwise they wouldn't have had the opportunity to that. And I think it's because my mom understood one thing and one thing very clearly. Education is the power to empower. So growing up in a house with 6+ kids, you can imagine, that was a lot of fun for the most part, especially over the school holidays when we got chores. And as the saying goes, many hands make light work. So chores were over before they got started. But it wasn't so fun, say, when there were 2 apples left in the fridge, and we all wanted them, all 6+ of us. And my mom would say, well, just to keep the peace, why don't you share them across all of you? That wasn't so fun. But it was fun for the most part because I think it made my mom really happy. And because my mom was happy, my dad was happy, obviously. And then we all were happy. And all this because a girl from rural Zimbabwe had a dream. Now to you I say, if that could happen, what more are you capable of, Switzerland? So to you I say, dream, Switzerland, dream. And please, make sure you take others on that journey. Now, the second story I'd like to share with you is a story about me. I call myself the darer in this story. It's also a story that I've affectionately come to know as my cricket story. Now, to those of you that aren't too familiar with what cricket is a sport. Not an insect. I just thought I should get that out of the way. It involves a hard ball about this big, as you can see on the screen, and a bat. And the general goal is to hit this ball as hard as you possibly can, as far as you possibly can, to earn points for your team. That's very simply put, by the way. Some say that cricket is the English version of baseball. Or is baseball the American version of cricket? I don't know. But all I can say is you should try it because it's a lot of fun. Now, cricket was my first love. I first came in contact with cricket when I was about 7 years old. Yeah, this was after I had been brutally rejected from the hockey team and the tennis team. But cricket just sort of stuck. It accepted me for who I was. But my love for cricket wasn't always, it was perceived as rather peculiar and unusual, mainly because of 2 reasons. So first of all, cricket is a male-dominated sport, even referred to as the gentleman's game. I'm not kidding. You can look it up. So you can imagine the amount of chaos and commotion I caused joining a team of little 8-year-old boys who kept going, "But she's a girl," pointing out the fairly obvious to the coach. But I mean, now that I think of it with my adult mind, I suppose I kind of get where they were coming from. I mean, even my mother, AKA the dreamer, she couldn't quite understand what had gotten into her daughter. Now, the second reason is that in immediate society, there was nothing that could reflect what I could become if I succeeded and if I pursued cricket. So in other words, there was no famous cricket player, no famous female cricket player, no famous Serena Williams of cricket known to us that would be a reflection of what I could become. But to me, it was pretty simple. Cricket was my thing, and people just didn't get it. And I became quite good at it. At the age of 12 years old, I moved to an all-girls high school. And at this high school, they called us ladies. And ladies most certainly do not play gentlemen's games. So they didn't even offer it. But fortunately for me, at that time, there were more girls playing cricket in the country, all around clubs in various parts of the country. So it wasn't long before I found my family of misfits. However, this meant that I had to, straight after school, I had to cross the entire town so that I could get all my practices and all my games in. This cricket thing grew and grew. I remember there's a time it was so demanding of my time. such that I had to miss a month or 2 months of school at times just to join training camps to keep up with the level that I was at. And at that time, I had struck a deal with my parents, my very understanding parents, who told me that once they started to feel that my grades were dropping, they would instantly take me out of the team. I also remember very vividly, actually, my English teacher threatening, "Miss Chinyemba, if you pursue this cricket shenanigans, you will fail." So you can imagine, it was a pretty tough time. So the days that I did miss school, upon my return, I really, really worked hard so that I could keep up my end of the deal. And I suppose the ultimate reward came when, at the age of 14, I was selected to represent my very own country, Zimbabwe, in the very first women's national cricket team. And at the World Cup qualifiers too. So, and it was just really this final reward that came to me when I didn't expect it. And I have to also point out that I played cricket for 5 more years, and I rose to be captain of the Zimbabwe under-19s team when I was 17, and I actually did go on to pass my exams, just in case you were wondering. Now, my cricket story is like everything to me. It's that story of daring, to listen to my inner voice when all else around me didn't quite understand what was going on. It's my story of having this strong conviction, until that point when everything turns in your favor, and all those people who said no, no, no started saying yes, yes, yes. So even till today, when I'm faced with the toughest of times in the office, I tell myself, Ruva, remember the cricket story. So to you, I say, if a 7-year-old could dare pursue a sport when nobody else understood, what more are you capable of, Switzerland? So to you, I say, dare, Switzerland, dare. Now, the third story I'd like to share with you, is a story that's very close to my heart. So I don't play cricket anymore. I'm a full-time corporate girl. I work for a chocolate manufacturing company, by the way, mostly producing Belgian chocolate. Now, I know what you're thinking. I'm not here to answer the question of which chocolate is better, Swiss or Belgian. I told myself I'll stay away from that controversy all day. But I'm sure we can all agree that to those of you that love eating chocolate, it does bring you a lot of happiness, right? It's actually scientifically proven that by eating chocolate, endorphins are released to the brain. But chocolate, as much as it's good for you, it's not a happy story for everybody that's involved in its supply chain. Specifically, the cocoa farmers, who are responsible for the key ingredient that goes into chocolate. The majority of cocoa farmers, mostly coming from West Africa, Ivory Coast, and Ghana, and I see Yvonne in the audience because third is Cameroon, they live in poverty. This means that they're making less than 2 Swiss francs a day. Now, there's a lot of work and there's a lot of programs that are going on to lift farmers out of poverty. I myself, I work in chocolate sustainability, and my job is to ensure that in as much as we promise to deliver happiness in the form of a box full of chocolate treats, we don't lose sight of the happiness and the development of the cocoa farmers upon which we rely. And one thing that really melts my heart about the work that I'm doing is the role in which empowering women farmers plays in lifting cocoa economies up. So I choose to call women farmers a group of doers in my story today. Research shows that by empowering a woman farmer or by increasing her financial gain, she's more likely going to direct this financial gain towards the education and the well-being of her child. So through the selfless doing of women farmers, cocoa communities are getting better. And I have to share with you this story. There was a time, I'm full of stories, clearly. There's a time when, about 2 months ago, I was attending one of our opening ceremonies for a program that is targeted towards women empowerment, or a women nursery project that we have running in Ghana. So it turns out that this group of women came together And because they came together, they were able to raise a lot of seedlings for their nursery, more than enough for them, and enough that they could even sell for additional income. Now the best part. Seeing the success of this project, the men in the village felt so challenged and so motivated that they bought the land opposite the nursery of the women to set up their own nursery. So suddenly there were so many seedlings in this village that they could sell to the surrounding villages. So just like that, through the selfless doing of women farmers, the entire village got better. And I can't think of the best words or better words to sum it up than the words spoken by the chief at the opening ceremony when he quoted one of Africa's most famous proverbs, and he said, "Educate a woman, and you have educated an entire village." So to you I say, if a group of women farmers can change a village for the better, if women farmers can do, what more are you capable of, Switzerland? If you can teach someone, teach. If you can mentor someone, mentor them. The world does look up to you, and I am not joking. In fact, I can prove it. So I told you Zimbabwe was a mess, is a mess currently, but a couple of years ago, our economy, rather in the 1990s, our economy was one of the best in the continent. We had the best education in the continent as well, and we were called the Switzerland of Africa, okay? And I've come to learn that Singapore is referred to as the Switzerland of Asia. You see where I'm going with this? 2 months ago, I was on vacation with a group of friends of mine that are actually based here in Zurich, and we were in South America. And we were on a cab drive in Montevideo, Uruguay. And the driver was telling us all these amazing things about Uruguay, which are true, by the way. He went to tell us how Uruguay is the most stable economy in South America. And then he went on to say, Uruguay is the Switzerland of South America. And we thought, that's cool. And in the same breath, he went on to ask us, and where are you guys from? To which one of my friends jokingly replied, well, we are from the Switzerland of Europe. Which we all found funny, of course. But the driver, unimpressed and with a rather blank face, he went on to say, but which country is that? So I think I rest my case, right? If your country is known more as an adjective than the noun that it actually is, it means that you've made it. The world looks up to you, so you should do something. And to you I say, do, Switzerland, do. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.